Hello, everyone. My name is Virginia Hiner Antypas. I'm a counsel in the Telecom, Media, and Technology group at Akin, where we work on numerous issues related to drones and UAS, with a particular focus on spectrum for drones. I'm so excited to be here as your moderator for this panel, which will build on the foundation laid in last year's discussion by diving deeper into the evolving landscape of unmanned aerial systems. This year, our panelists are going to take you on an international journey through the latest legal policy and regulatory developments that are shaping the world of drone regulations worldwide. We will examine how these regulations are facilitating the seamless integration of drones into national and local airspaces, with a particular focus on the groundbreaking advancements that are happening in the world of beyond visual line of sight, or BVLOS operations. So I'd love to start by introducing you to the panel of experts who will be speaking with us today. I'll note that full bios for everyone are available online on the... Except for his. But maybe we could just go quickly around and have everyone briefly introduce themselves for 30 seconds or so.
All right. I guess I'll go first. I'm the ring-in. So David Cole, co-founder, CEO of FlyFreely. So we're a drone management platform based out of Australia. Been in the industry since 2013. Obviously, a long history of complex operations in Australia. We've been involved in a few of those, and our customers have been as well. So happy to speak on those topics.
Good afternoon. My name is Umoh. I am the chairman of an organization called the African Drone Forum. We are the largest network of drone professionals on the continent. We do a lot of work out of Nigeria, and Kenya, and South Africa as well. And we're looking to build the ecosystem and help U.S., European, and Asian companies to enter the African drone market. So very happy to share my experience as well.
Good afternoon. My name is Joanna Wieczorek. I come from Europe, from Poland. I'm based in Warsaw. I run my law firm since 20 years now. I'm experienced in air law. I work with airports, airlines, ground handling companies, and drone operators. I have been representing Drone Alliance Europe for over 6 years on the European market. And right now I'm working as an expert for Lazarski Aviation Academy. Thank you, Don, for the invitation.
I'm Erika Carrasco. I'm a partner at MLT Aikins in Canada. We're the largest law firm in Western Canada, I think. So we span from British Columbia right through to Manitoba. And so, yes, I am Canadian, if you can see my shirt. And I also sit on the board of Aerial Evolution Association of Canada, where I was the conference chair last year and then the conference chairs again this year. So hopefully we'll see you all there in Edmonton in November of 2025.
And my name's Sarah Nilsson. Bio's online. It's quite long. I've been in the US since '94. Been a ATP pilot, CFI, then recently drone pilot. Went to law school, became a lawyer, been doing aviation law now for 11 years. My major work is at Embry-Riddle, where I'm a law professor. I specialize in aviation law, drone law, and AAM. In my spare time, I've written about 5 legal textbooks. Most of them are used in colleges around the country and in Poland. I volunteer in my spare time with the FAA as a safety team rep and a drone pro. And when I get a chance, I fly my airplane for fun. Thanks for having me, Dawn.
So before we start, I just want to make a quick note that we're not going to be addressing the U.S. in this session because the last panel of today on UTM and BVLOS will be covering that. So maybe just to start off, just to level set, let's do an around the world on the general regulatory schemes that everyone's using. We heard from the last panel about ICAO and Annex 2 in the context of eVTOLs, but I'd like to start here at a high level first. Sarah, not to pick on you, but
all right.
Could you tell us a little bit about ICAO, maybe just give an introduction to what it is and what approach it's taking to UAS?
Perfect. Yes, so I'm not talking to the US, I'm talking to ICAO, which is fair since part of my one of my textbooks is global drone law, and I have to populate starting with ICAO and EASA, so home turf. So this is going to be very basic to lay the foundation for the rest of the panel, for the rest of the hours, so that you're not lost. We all know where ICAO came from, 1944 Chicago Convention. Literally, it's comprised of 193 countries in the world, all member states of ICAO. Their purpose is to cooperate together and share their skies to a mutual benefit. So ICAO leads the way with a strategic global vision for effective, sustainable solution. The purpose is to develop and support a global aviation system. And they do this to ensure safe, secure, efficient, and environmentally responsible standards. The standards are called SARPs, Standards and Recommended Practices. And ICAO also provides technical assistance to all nations to foster international cooperation. And it's quite interesting to note, as a side note to the previous panel, last year they hosted the very first AAM symposium worldwide. It was beautiful. I wasn't able to attend. It was in Montreal, Canada, of course, their headquarters. And the best part for people like me who want to be there but can't, ICAO has a TV station. They record all these symposia and webinars, and they put them on their TV stations. You can watch them later at your own leisure. So I was asked to explain ICAO's role in UAS, and there's a vast role. First of all, a number of years ago, about a decade ago, ICAO published some model UAS regs to assist member states in creating their own governmental regulatory framework. We have things like Part 101 for drones that are weighing 25 kilograms or less, Part 102 for those weighing more than 25 kilograms, and then Part 149, specialized tasks. Now, for those of you who are not aware, when a regulation is formed, the regulators will sometimes create what we call an advisory circular to go ahead and explain the regulation to the layfolk. And so ICAO also has some of those advisory circulars, and then, of course, Canada gets a special one for just for safety assurance. They also deal with safety in terms of safety management systems, and I'm sure in the United States you're aware that Part 135 operations now must have a SMS system in progress. Almost done. So So ICAO also provides the UTM framework, which you heard mention of in the previous panel. They're on their 4th edition of this UTM framework. They started in 2016. We're on the 2023 version. It's a common framework for core principles for global harmonization of the airspace. They include BVLOS. They have had that in there. And their vision, and I'm going to quote it here, is to provide real-time information regarding airspace constraints and intentions of other aircraft to UAS operators, remote pilots, through a UTM service provider. You heard a little bit of that in the previous panel. Via what we call APIs, which are application programming interfaces, and it's all done digitally, not with traditional voice communication between pilots and air traffic controllers. And we're going to talk about that, I think, later in the panel.
Great. Thank you.
Sorry for the length.
Comprehensive overview. That was helpful. So, Joanna, I'll pick on you next. Could you talk a little bit about what framework Europe is using?
Thank you. So first of all, I would like to say that in Europe, we have 3 kinds of operations: open, specific, and certified. And open category is pretty simple because everyone can fly a drone without authorization from Civil Aviation Authority based locally in European member state. And usually operations that are in the open category are not at the very high level, and the drone doesn't carry payload. The drone is not heavy, and the flight is made in the site of the operator. in the visual side of the operator. So for those kind of flights, we don't need any risk assessment. For the flights in the certified category, we are dealing with a huge drones overflying big cities. Right now, we don't see those operations. This is the future. EASA is still working on the certified category, and this is something that we are all willing to see in the future. We hope that air taxis stopped for now, but we are hoping that they will fly in the future, and we will be in the Jetsons scenario. So we will have a chance to fly from George Bush Airport to the Exponential Center to Houston by an eVTOL, and it will be fast, comfortable, and we will be here in 5 minutes, not stuck in the traffic jam. So in the middle of those two extreme operations, so operation made in the open category and operation made in the certified category, we have specific operations. And this is where SORA is helpful. In Europe, Lorenzo Murzilli and Yves Morier are two best experts, according to my opinion, on SORA. They support drone operators in making this process. And actually, operator needs to bring his own risk assessment to the authority to get it approved. And once it's approved, operator can fly. So we have like six types of SORA. I mean, 6 types of sail. Sail 1, Sail 2, Sail 3, Sail 4, and Sail 6. And all the operations after Sail 6 are in the certified category. When it comes to SORA, we are still working on SORA 2.5 and SORA 3.0. I think they will be ready in the near future. And I wanted to draw your attention that near the SORA, we have also 2 standard scenarios, predefined risk assessments, and light unmanned aircraft operator certificate called LUC. In Europe, where you are not willing to spend a lot of money and a lot of time on SORA, you can fly in those 4 other options. So to conclude, I like to show you some statistics. We have 29 LUCs in Europe nowadays. We have 1,581 declarations on STS. We have 400 authorizations issued using PDRA. We have authorizations issued using SORA, more than 2,600. We have 1,008,000 registered operators. Total pilots in STS, 63,000. And total pilots in open category, 1.5 million. So I think this statistic shows that we are developing and we are flying a lot, but some options are more convenient. For instance, LUC is still considered to be too expensive. Of course, companies like Mana Drone Deliveries that are doing great, making their businesses, they can afford those types of authorization. But startups and smaller companies, they can just dream about it. So I guess that's my quick intro to SORA in Europe.
Very helpful. Thank you. So Erika, pivoting to you, I believe Canada also uses a SORA framework. Does that deviate in any respect from the European approach that was just described to us?
So we do follow JARA SORA as the basis of our SORA analysis. However, we've manipulated that a little bit to adapt to Canada's sort of unique situation, both on geography and population density. So I just wanted to highlight for the audience what some of those key differences are. Just when you're speaking to clients who want to operate in Canada, you may want to sort of make sure you point them to these things. I've added to the resources some excellent resources, which is the AC the circular 903-001 issue 2. So that is the latest on SORA in Canada that it sort of adopts JARA's 2.5. as well as a video that Transport Canada did explaining some of those changes. So I'll do my best to just summarize them high level. But in the step 1 of the SORA approach, the difference in Canada is that we focused on an operational volume that includes flight geography, contingency volume, and the ground risk buffer. So that is the main focus of when you're describing your ConOps, as well as in the step 2, where JARA's SORA uses size and speed of the RPAS. In Canada, we're using the operating weight for that calculation. There's also the mitigation cases that are outlined. And in Canada, that's strictly a case-by-case basis. So even though there are suggested mitigation uses, Transport Canada gets to have the ultimate say on whether that actually reduces the risk. Similar to Europe, if you end up with a ground risk of more than 7, you are simply outside the process and you need special exceptions. And as well as there's some revised definitions to match more of our BVLOS regulations that have come out. So atypical airspace, as well as what we call ARC-C, has different definitions now. And part of it was to be more restrictive, but otherwise was to also broaden and allow for more of a standardization of the risk levels. And the last area, or I guess the second last area where we've differed is there's different adjusted robustness levels for some of our operational safety objectives. So of the 24, there's a few of them that have just adjusted up or down again to kind of more move streamline with what we've seen actually happen. In Canada, under our SORA process, we have 5 standardized scenarios in which you just follow that standardized risk assessment, so you don't have to go through your own analysis. And that hasn't fully developed through JARA SORA yet.
Great. So David, same question to you. Australia has also adopted the SORA. Are there any points of divergence in Australia that are worth highlighting?
So SORA 2.5, I believe we wholly adopted, and that's how most organisations have got their approvals for complex operations. So Google Wing, my understanding, when they got their delivery approval in Australia, it was under SORA 2.0. We're in the process of adopting 2.5. Like the Canadians, we had some issues around population density and it being very, very low in certain areas, i.e. the desert, and how you deal with that. So I believe some other levels have been introduced into that area. But primarily 2.5 is going to be adopted. So I'm also a member of JARIS, an industry member who write the SORA. So I have a little bit of inside intel on what's happening. SORA 3.0 is going to include a quantitative air risk model. So that's the big focus. I'm not involved in that, but that is a big focus. And there's lots of people all around the world working on that right now. However, what we are involved is the researcher who's leading the air risk task force. Has a project up in Australia to apply that to the whole country of Australia. So we're currently characterising the entire airspace of Australia. So what does that mean and why is it important? Basically, the outcome of that will be maps of air risk. So it will essentially start to eliminate the arguments between operators and regulators as to what's the risk in that airspace. Done in a scientific, robust way, and the regulators involved in that project to actually sign off on the method. So once it's approved, anyone can use those maps as evidence of whether their operation is at the right, above or below the risk threshold. So that we think that's going to be pretty exciting, and that'll be sort of the first real world demonstration of that sort of approach. Which should then feed into JARIS and then, sort of the rest of the world to try and help accelerate this part of the approval process. So, yeah, we're super excited to see how it's all going to pan out. And really looking forward to it.
Great. Okay, last but certainly not least, how about Africa? Is there even a general framework there at all?
Yeah, so I think a lot of times it's easy to look at Africa as a block, of course, but there are 54 different countries with their own priorities and processes and ways of regulating, drones and airspace in general. So what we've seen now is about almost 60% of countries now have some sort of regulatory framework in place that allow for visual line of sight. One of the challenges that we have across a lot of these countries is even the cost to become licensed, a licensed operator. So this could be anywhere from 10 to even 20 times the cost that it takes to become a licensed operator, here in the U.S. So there's a huge barrier to entry into a lot of these countries. We've seen that a lot of adoption of the FAA, regulations. If you have a UK license, for instance, you're able to use, that is recognized in a lot of these countries as well. But on the same token, you have the countries that are also, looking to, regulate their own rules for pilots. We actually have talked a lot about an African SORA. But again, with so many different countries adopting their own rules and going about it different ways, it's really been tough to have that blanket coverage for the entire continent. One of the ways that we're looking to improve this is by having a UAS readiness index. So we're looking at country by country to understand, all right, how ready is this country to allow for BV loss? Are they ready to implement any type of, UTM systems, and using that to put the information out there? And then we're also looking at country by country reports, industry reports, where we are specifically interviewing the operators on ground to ask them what do they want to see, in these certain regulations. So there's a lot of groundwork being done, of course. We have events such like this to bring together regulators and industry folks to talk about, the way forward. But it's a very complex continent, for sure, and a lot of work to be done, but we're optimistic about the future, for sure.
Super interesting. So I'd like to pivot next to talk a little bit. Oh, oops, did not mean to do that. There we go. Talk a little bit about beyond visual line of sight, or BV loss. So at this point, I believe believe line of sight operations are universally required. But could we talk a little bit about how different regions are addressing BV loss to scale around the world? And Sarah, I'm going to pick on you again. I'm wondering if you could lead us off on this by talking a little bit about ICAO's approach, and then maybe we can go around from there to get a more global perspective.
Certainly. So ICAO has long had on its toolbox an ICAO toolkit. And in amongst this toolkit is what we call the RPAS ConOps. Now, there's a million ways to call a drone, and RPAS is one of those, like UAS, UAV, it goes on and on. But they call it the RPAS ConOps, and it describes the operational environment of manned and unmanned, or if you want to call it crewed and uncrewed aircraft, thereby ensuring a common understanding of the challenges and how the subset that are remotely piloted can be expected to be accommodated and ultimately integrated into the airspace. And here's the best part: for international instrument flight rules. Now, IFR operations, for those of us not pilots in the room, we have VFR, visual flight rules, and we have IFR, instrument flight rules, and that's what this ConOps has. So ICAO has a lot of a framework to assist countries in moving beyond the visual. And now I think we'll pass it on.
Is that who you want next?
You can just go down the line.
Well, we're very excited in Canada to now have our BV loss regs in force and effect. So that has been big, hot news. As of April 1, you can now get your complex level 1 certification to prepare for the regulations that will then be allowed to fly under the regulations on November 4th, 2025. So right now, if just a quick history, we had our Part 9 Part 107 equivalent come into force in 2019. Just to give you an idea of the time spent on all these regulations, it's sort of been a 5-year gap in between drafting them, consulting, revising, and then coming into force and effect. One of the things we were really worried about in Canada was, as Ted mentioned on his panel, there was some delays already. We had an election coming up and thought perhaps they would get stalled even further, but we were very happy when they did come into force before the election. So again, we've put into the resources the full details of the new amendments. And so I won't go into all of that, but I wanted to highlight that there are new definitions now that are part of the regulations for both BVLOS, EVLOS, VLOS, sheltered operations, slightly different than the US, as well as sparsely populated. So we know that in JARA SORA that term is used. We've adopted it in our SORA. We've now defined it. Australia has a definition as well, but it's slightly different. So it's kind of interesting to see how we've all come at it. As I mentioned, there's a new pilot certification called Level 1 Complex Operations. You have to be 18, pass an online advanced exam, do a flight review, as well as 20 hours of ground school and another flight review. There's been some comments about the length of time required and the cost to do that. So that'll remain to be seen as to whether that is a barrier to industry at all. Basically, what we've seen here is medium VLOS be regulated, as well as low risk and lower weight class BVLOS regulated. And so you can now fly sheltered operations, EVLOS, and medium drone VLOS. Sheltered ops means a small drone close to a structure, more than 100 feet from people and no more than 100 feet above a structure, or less than 200 horizontal feet away from the structure. EVLOS just means short-range small drones that cannot be seen by an unaided eye, remain in uncontrolled air, and fly more than 100 feet away from people, not involved in the operation. So a trained visual observer with an RPAS certificate, or fly within 2 nautical miles of an operator or a control station. So again, we've defined some of those terms in the new regulations. And our medium-sized drone is up to 150 kgs, which I think is fairly standard. There's also some new technical standards for different flying systems for complex and special flight operations, as well as for flying micro drones at advertised events. And of course, with new regulations comes new fee structures and new fine structures. So those have all been updated to reflect the additional costs associated with these higher risk operations.
Okay, so the European perspective is quite similar to what you have described in Canada, and we also have BVLOS flights thanks to harmonization of European law. 945, 947, I described it last year during Downsville conference in San Diego, and I know most of the audience experts, they are familiar with those regulations. So I will just say that Europe is using those regulations, and some countries, some drone companies are actually complaining that before 945, 947, their regulator was more liberal, and the BVLOS flights were easier to execute. Right now, the regulations sometimes are tough, but there are ways to cope with them, and there are ways to perform flight operations. The proof is that we have many companies that are doing drone deliveries. For instance, Mana drone deliveries that I have mentioned, talking about Sora, Flying Basket from Italy, which is quite famous when it comes to drone deliveries of packages above 25 kilograms. Right now, they are entering the Polish market, so I am happy because I might have a new customer. And we Ring, which is also operating on the American market, in Australia, and also in Finland. They are doing great job in Europe as well, and the regulation is not such a huge burden. Also, there is a Polish company called Farada. They are doing a lot of BVLOS flights connected to medical deliveries, also operating in Africa. Perhaps one day I will introduce the managing director of this company to you. I think it would be beneficial for you and for them. I can say that I'm proud of European drone companies, that even though the regulatory landscape is not always easy, it's time consuming, it's not cheap because look costs a lot of money. Entrepreneurs are motivated and they try to push this industry forward. So I think BVLOS are ongoing in Europe.
So from the African perspective, there are no countries right now that have blanket BVLOS rules in place, but they're very much granted on a case-by-case basis through various waivers and so forth. I would say one of the biggest use cases, most successful use cases, is Zipline, who's been operating in Rwanda since 2014. Recently, they came out and said they've had 100 million miles of deliveries officially globally, and then they are, I think, approaching 1.5 million actual deliveries globally with their solutions. About 70% of that has happened in Africa. And so there's a lot of adoption, not just in Rwanda. They're now in Nigeria, in Kenya, and they're looking to expand into a few other countries as well. So we've seen that there's interest, especially for a lot of U.S., European companies who want to use a space in Africa for testing. And we're seeing the adoption of more drone corridors, specifically in Malawi and Rwanda as well. And we are working with a few of those governments and agencies to best utilize those resources in a business sense, as well. So BVLOS is definitely emerging, but yeah, Zipline is definitely a big player when it comes to that. And even in Rwanda right now, they're up to about 400 deliveries per day, mostly with healthcare related items, and about 12,000 per month. So they have a system that's really integrated, with the government right now, and it's inspiring to see how much they've been able to do, over the years.
Awesome. So obviously a lot happening in Australia if you follow the drone news. But before I get into BVLOS, I might just take a step back and give you an idea of how people get there, because I think that's the regulator likes that. Regulator likes the crawl, walk, run approach, right? So typically all organizations, they get their operator certificate in Australia. So that enables you to do commercial visual line of sight operations, and then apply for various exemptions on top of that. The first one that typically happens after that is the extended visual line of sight approval. So that'll enable you to get up to 1.5 kilometers away, and that's a blanket approval across the whole country. So you just do it once. In that process, we're very lucky. The regulator has developed a beyond line of sight certification. So that's actually a certificate that you can get. Traditionally, you had to get your instrument rating, so your crewed aircraft instrument rating to fly beyond line of sight. That's still the case if you want to go on controlled airspace, but outside of controlled airspace, you can use this new certificate. So this is basically now really opening it up. Having a framework is massive. That's all public on the regulator's website. Go and steal it, right? They've done lots of really good work, figuring out the syllabus. So there's lots of detail in the syllabus, all the things they're looking for. Go for it. And then obviously once you've got to that stage, you can then typically apply for a true beyond line of sight operation. So to give you examples of what people are doing and what's been allowed. So lots of drone in the box activity happening in Australia. So this is true remote operations, primarily on the mine sites, because what's at a mine site? Not a lot. So not a lot of air traffic, not a lot of ground risk. Having said that, the regulator still imposes some interesting requirements. So, for example, you still have to be able to broadcast on airband radio remotely. So you have to be able to send and receive to local air traffic, but being hundreds of kilometres away. So there's some technical things around that. They also want to know, they want you to have extra cameras to look at what's on the ground and what's above you, right? Because they pull out, what if someone moves a crane over the top of your drone in a box? Okay, fair enough. So you got to have a camera that can look up and before you take off, validate, yes, there's nothing there. And likewise, when you're landing, is your emergency landing zone actually clear? So it's and so what this has led to is actually some companies doing basically integrating all these systems together, right? So now you've got some pretty cool systems that people have made. So fully integrated trailer systems with power, communications, cameras, like all the bells and whistles. So you can literally drive somewhere, drop it, and then fully operate remotely. So that's typically, again, limited to probably 5 kilometre range, so quite a small range. But some people have got long linear approvals. So the biggest one, I believe, is 500 kilometres. So there's a company flying uncrewed helicopter to do pipeline inspections, 500 Ks. I believe another organisation is using a big solar-powered drone that flies for about 8 hours, and I think they did South Australia, basically the whole state, right, is huge, hundreds of thousands of hectares. So there's some of the ones I know of. I'm sure there's lots and lots of other things happening. But yeah, we're very lucky that, and the thing I say about Australia is there's always a path. Now, how fast that path is and how much it costs is open for question, but there's always a path. And that's what attracts, a lot of organisations to actually come and try and get things moving in Australia. And it also helps we have, a lot of airspace where there's not a lot happening. So yeah, that's I think probably the more interesting parts. And just coming back to the how the airspace is assessed, that is again one of the sticking points. So a lot of these operations that are getting approved, it's assumed to be essentially atypical airspace, right? Where you're not expecting an aircraft to be. And that's how a lot of these things are getting over the line. I will say I don't think we've had a Sail 3 approved yet in Australia. I believe Europe has had a Sail 3 and a Sail 4, maybe. So there's still questions around once you get to that higher and need those higher levels of assurance around the manufacturing processes and detect and avoid and all those sorts of things. That's still sort of being worked on, and organisations are still going through that process.
Great. Thank you. So now I'd like to touch on global UAS traffic management, or UTM. So looking towards a future where there are ubiquitous drone operations, there needs to be a traffic management system. Can we talk a little bit about where we are on this? And again, just as a reminder, we'll be covering the U.S. later today in the last panel of the day. But maybe we could pass the microphone back to Sarah and start again from that direction.
So what does ICAO envision for this global UTM? So their framework is not a solution. What they propose is a system design. And I'm going to explain it because it's made up of multiple parts. A lot of these you'll be familiar with already. So it all begins with a registration component. I'm sure most of you are familiar. We have registration of all these UAS. Then there's an identification component. And I'm sure you're familiar with, in the US, we have remote ID. There's a communication part of this, and that's between UTM, between air traffic control, and between crewed aircraft, which at this moment we need to work on. Then there's a detect and avoid piece. You've heard that ad nauseum. And then there's a geofencing portion of that. There's the infrastructure, which a lot of different countries use. We've heard already different ways to go about managing that infrastructure piece on the ground. There's the frequency spectrum. And Also, I'm sure you're aware that the remote ID calls either for specific session ID or specific authentication methods. And we have the electronic ID, which is what ICAO puts forth. And a lot of countries are doing all these bits and pieces. Like I said, we're all members of ICAO, and we kind of follow similar, even if we don't attack the skinning of the cat in a different way. We all skin the cat eventually. So I'm going to hand it on to see what Canada does.
So with respect to just the parts of the framework that you talked about, in Canada, we don't have any remote ID requirements. With the new regulations, they have put into play registration of the drone, but not sure exactly what implication that will have or what utility within the framework, how that will help at all. We have been working for some time on a UTM system. So we've had phase 1 and are now in phase 2 of what we call RTM trials. Those have been run through Transport Canada and Nav Canada, who's tasked with this project. And basically what the goal is to, with the next set of regulations, to do larger VLOS and medium BVLOS, have a UTM framework in place for 2030. So you all heard it here, 2030, Transport Canada, Nav Canada. And so because again of our population and our geography, things that are being considered in this system are rural corridors for AAM or for other types of operations. And so really what we're trying to do is get enough data right now together to have a system that works for Canada. And I think that's how these frameworks are going to have to be, either for the specific region or for the specific countries.
Thank you very much. I really liked your both visions of UTM and U-Space. And in Europe, we are talking about the U-Space since 2016. There was a great conference, high-level conference on drones held in Warsaw in Poland, where Violetta Bulc, European Transport Commissioner, for the first time mentioned the term U-Space. By saying so, she talked about the future regulation and also the future ecosystem, because regulation is necessary to create the ecosystem. And in Europe, we have many regulations that are already existing. However, it's not clear how we will set up the whole ecosystem. It is not so easy. From our experience, we know that the concept of drone demonstrators that Violetta Bulc encouraged to establish in the European countries was not too successful. We gave up on it, but right now we have a new concept which is called the network of U-Space stakeholders. And this network of U-Space stakeholders is put in place by Commission, EASA, Eurocontrol and CESAR. And it aims to promote dialogue and exchange of experience among the early implementers of U-Spaces. So 3 cities, Antwerp, Hamburg, and Rotterdam, already created and put in place U-Space systems. And actually for those ports, those systems work very well. They can test the drone flights where drones are carrying the small packages to the ships near the port. And also they are carrying small samples of medication. So this is quite easy. And it makes sense for those cities to work a lot with multiple stakeholders on the U-Space systems. However, other cities far away from the maritime infrastructure don't see a point in making an effort, a huge investment and an effort to set up U-Space systems. So we just have those 3 great examples of 3 European cities who are really doing a great job working on this in practice. And we are also very proud of Switzerland, Belgium, and Poland, because they also work a lot on U-Space airspace. And they work a lot on technology that can actually support drones stay away from airports and stay away from the aircrafts, so the manned traffic. U-Space, of course, the main goal of the U-Space is to scale the drone business. But the main goal of U-Space is also to make coexistence of manned and unmanned aviation possible. And we cannot forget about the main goals of U-Space. I must say that the U-Space regulation is very difficult, and at the Lazarski Aviation Academy, where I am also teaching about air law and drone law. Our students learn from the best experts who are the ANSP experts, and they have difficulties to follow European regulation because it's not simple. It's not simple. Of course, expressis verbis, where when we read it, everything is crystal clear, but when we need to implement it, it's not so obvious. So I'm very happy that the number of the companies that are working on air traffic management and drone traffic management is growing. And there are many technology companies who are building the methods to make the traffic, to make the common traffic possible. So to make sure that manned traffic can coexist with unmanned. And we hope that this will help to scale the business.
So I would say most civil aviation authorities in Africa have a sort of wait and see approach. I think until we have a recognized kind of global standard for UTM systems throughout, that's when we would see more adoption on the continent. Right now, we're looking a lot, of course, at the U-Space scenario. We're also having a lot of talks and partnerships discussed with Korea and their K-drone system that they're using to both integrate the air taxis there and a lot of their BB-loss flights, that they're doing. So we're very much open to discussions and bringing in, certain solutions that will help accelerate, the adoption of UTM in some of these countries. I would say most likely it would be a South Africa, again, with Rwanda and Zipline and a number of flights that they're doing. They have their own system and their way of working with the government there. But one thing I always say, especially when dealing, with Africa and the Africa factor, it's local solutions for local problems. And it's less of, bringing in a set framework and just, assuming that it will work there. It's more building a system from the ground up and not assuming that, because it works, one place, it's going to automatically work, on the continent. So there's a lot of work, to go there. But as I said, with close to 60% who are just working on basic regulations, UTM is not at the top of the list. It's not like the main priority right now. It's more making sure that, operators are able to get, licensed. We have more ATOs, training academies that are able to train folks, on the ground and vet, some of the operations that are going on. So it's definitely top of mind, but it's not like a huge priority right now. And again, we're just kind of taking a wait and see approach to see what works in other places.
Australia's definitely jumping in with both feet. So we're quite fortunate. We're actually connected to 3 live national systems. So the current Australian system run by CASA, the New Zealand system run by AirShare, and Lance run by FAA, obviously. So we can tell you about the pros and cons of all the different systems. They've all got different architectures and different approaches. So to give you some context, the New Zealand system's essentially all central. So essentially what we send to the New Zealand system is, here's the mission plan, and then the New Zealand system will basically tell us approved, not approved. Whereas both the Australian system and Lance, and I don't know how many people know this, but we as the software provider actually do the authorization. So we are checking your plan against the rules and airspace and then providing back a yes or no, right? So that's how those systems are working. We were also lucky enough to be involved in a FIMS project in Australia. So I believe the last panel talking about FIMS, Flight Information Management System. So we were partnered with Frequentis on that as the USS. So they were doing all the, air traffic controller back-end type functions. We're doing all the operator functions. So in that, we were testing, it was a prototype. So it was testing all the advanced stuff. So conformance monitoring, dynamic rerouting, trying to think of the other term, all the awareness services, all those types of things. And we specifically, when we did that, so typically a lot of this UTM work is done using bespoke aircraft, with sort of, everything's super bespoke, super customized. We deliberately went and did it with a DJI off-the-shelf aircraft, right? To trying to show when you want to take these things and put them in the UTM system, what happens. So what happened? A few interesting things. So, the UTM system, it was doing all this cool dynamic rerouting. So it's like, I want to go here to there. Oh no, a helicopter's coming in. Cool, you're going to reroute. So, it goes and reroutes and does its thing. Successful. Success. We've done it. So the pilot, what do the pilot do when they want to return the drone? Return to home. And what do you think the drone does? Plows through everything, right? So all these awesome zones and things you've set up just mean nothing, right? So, and one of the things that was pretty obvious to me then is one of the downsides of this UTM stuff is a lot of the off-the-shelf aircraft may not meet the requirements to actually go into that environment. So in that case, the drone would have to know where it came from and trace itself back, right? When you hit the fail-safe. Now, how many off-the-shelf drones have that capability? I doubt any of them have it. So this is raising all these sort of interesting questions, and when you think about it, it's kind of like the highway analogy. You don't have a push bike on a highway because they don't meet the performance requirements of the highway sort of thing. So, and where do those lines get drawn? And I think that's where the real policy regulatory debate is going to get really interesting because obviously you're going to pushing some companies who have capabilities, really good capabilities will, want to have that bar as high as possible, right? Because it keeps everyone else out. So those sorts of things. The other things we saw in Australia, whenever you put in a flight plan, it has to be approved by the chief pilot. So if the chief pilot's evaluating air and ground risk, so when you go and do this new route, it's changing the air and ground risk, right? So the drone's sitting there waiting for is stopped, waiting for the chief pilot to approve the new route, right? So that's clearly not practical, right? So that's where, okay, how do you change the regulations to essentially give the pilot in command almost authority to, or is it the FIMS that's going to provide the authority on what are the risks and the FIMS is going to accept the risk? And where's that liability set? All these sorts of interesting questions that start to pop up. So having said all that, what's currently happening in Australia is the FIMS is being deployed. It's just going to start off in doing airspace approvals, low altitude airspace approvals, and then over the next 2 to 3 years, it'll progressively introduce these more advanced services as kind of the policy framework gets figured out. But there's still lots of questions, particularly around will it apply in Class G airspace, and the implications of that. So I think everyone's grappling. I think all the regulators and authorities are grappling with these issues. But you got to start somewhere. That's what I always say. You start somewhere, start simple, get it moving. Otherwise, you'll never start, and nothing will ever happen. So that's kind of my. I'll get off my soapbox. How's that?
Sorry, I have to interrupt you. Do we have time for one lightning round question or? 30 seconds or less. Okay. We were going to do 3, but I'm going to do 1. So you each get 30 seconds to answer this. What do you predict will advance in your countries or regions in terms of regulations for this year? And I'll start with you in reverse order.
Just trying to think.
But you get 30 seconds, so.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping I did talk about that air risk component. I'm hoping that gets, plan is it will be accepted by November. If that happens, that can trigger a whole lot of activity, which is because in essence, what it will do is open up a bunch of airspace which has been assumed to be high risk, and the data is probably going to say it's not actually high risk. Flip side is there's probably some areas which you can fly now where it's going to go, hang on, there's helicopters there, which are not on the maps, but it will be in the data. So there'll be probably swings and roundabouts, but that's the thing we're most excited about.
Yeah, I would say more ATOs, more training academies for sure, and more testing corridors. Right now, Kenya has about 27 training academies. They're the 7th most populous country. Nigeria is the most populous, and they have 1. So there is a bit of a disparity when it comes to how the countries are approving these training academies. But anyone who knows me a bit, I do a lot of work with youth and with STEM development as well. So this is very much needed to help the next generation become a part of the industry. And we're very hopeful that that's takes place over the next year or so.
So I have a dream when it comes to Poland. Before we had many applications in drones for goods. So drones were used in many civil applications, and due to the conflict with Ukraine, many companies, they shifted to the military business. So I want the shift again to the civil applications of drones, and I would be very happy to see drones in critical infrastructure, in agriculture, in monitoring cargo, runways, airport runways. It would be great to have drones again. It would be great to have drones again in the civil applications. So this is my dream when it comes to the business, and when it comes to regulatory part, I would love to see the anti-drone regulation.
So 30 seconds, where do I see things going in the future? Hopefully by 2030, we will have those systems in place for larger drone operations. We will have regulations in place. We'll have UTM in place in Canada. I think what we'll also see is that people like us on the stage and in the audience who are working in this space will recognize that it's not just the drone regulations, it's social acceptance, it's cyber, it's supply chain management. It's everything we've talked about today that needs to all come together for this to advance. And so it's going to become even more important that the person talking about drones understands all those components and all the risk factors so that we can help work together to make sure that we're all advancing the industry, and where, manned and unmanned come together, or remotely piloted and autonomous transportation come together. So I remember years ago talking about autonomous vehicles, and I think we're all one and the same now. And so I think we need to start looking at the big picture altogether.
And I'm going to take off my ICAO hat that I've had to wear all this panel and talk about the US. What I'm really hopeful for is that we do see the BVLOS NPRM come out. That's the first step. And then the final rule in another year or so. And then I do hope that we consider integration a little bit more, especially with what I hear rumblings of the airspace, redoing the whole ATC system in this country and making it a little bit more modernized. We need to be able to do that, to integrate like the vision of ICAO, where we have a digital component, not a voice to aircraft component, so that we can integrate the UAS with the AAM, with the general aviation, with Part 121 and Part 135, and bring everyone harmoniously all into the airspace together, not in separate pockets. I see that as what we need, and I hope that's where we get to. Obviously, I won't be around by then.
Great. Okay.
So now's your opportunity. You're connecting through LinkedIn or something else. Any questions?
So this is a question for Australia, I guess. I'm very interested in this risk-based map that you mentioned. I'm curious. I could imagine a lot of inputs to that. I'm curious, is it all historical traffic pattern based, or are there other inputs? A little more details would be really
Yes.
great.
So I'm not the technical expert on it. I'm happy to. No, I will connect you with Aaron, who is the researcher, who's published papers on it. My understanding, so the initial work they did was with primary radar data. So they actually got the radar feed, and all traffic was put into the model over a given period. they're now extending that, because that's obviously great where there's radar coverage. What do you do where there's not? So they're currently extending that into ADS-B data. So they're running that for the more remote areas. And then I believe they've even got a method around airports with lodged flight plans. So there is no traffic, but there's kind of, they can do some assumptions. It's of lower confidence, so the risk levels will be probably elevated to be conservative. But there's essentially few methods in the works to essentially stitch the whole thing together and make it coherent. So that's the plan. We'll see how it comes out.
I was going to ask if you guys could all just real quick go down the line, tell people how they can reach you.
So really easy. Just Google drones across the world. You'll get to my book. My book has a link to my email. And alternatively, you can go to LinkedIn. Just type in my name off of the agenda today, and I'd be happy to connect and we can talk offline.
You can also find me on LinkedIn and Carrasco at mltakins.com. Would love to chat with anyone further about interest in doing business in Canada.
So I'm always on LinkedIn, 24 hours, 7 days per week. LinkedIn. So just reach out and I will answer.
Same. I'm very active on LinkedIn. We also have a banner in the back there. If you scan the QR code, we have a partner perspectives. You can learn how to partner with our organization. You can find us online at africandroneforum.org. And we'll be hosting events later on this year as well. So always looking to partner and collaborate.
So FlyFreely.io is the company. And I guess, like everyone, I got to say, I'm on LinkedIn. So I'm on LinkedIn as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much, all of you, for coming and speaking with us today.
Are you on LinkedIn as well?
I'm also on LinkedIn. Sorry, forgot about myself. My bio is on the Akin website and here, and you can reach me on LinkedIn through DM. But anyway, thank you guys so much for speaking with us. And everyone, please give our panel a round of applause.